It's Viktor speaking, and I'm here today with Ian, and we're gonna discover a little bit the seven deadly sins and the combination those with astrology. I'm very excited about this topic, and I'm very excited to do a video with Ian as well. Ian was one of my apprentices last year, so it was just about time to collaborate and introduce him as well. How have you been, Ian?
Hey, and thanks for having me here. And I've been good. And very big thank you, obviously, to you for being, my teacher during that time. I learned a lot. So if anybody's like figuring or wondering if to do the apprenticeship course with Viktor, I would definitely recommend you to take it on. It will help you grow as an astrologer a lot, for sure.
Oh, thank you. I remember your first day and I remember your last day, so you are always one of my examples, surely. So, what do you think about the seven deadly sins, and are we able to combine those with astrology?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic for sure. But I think, one of the funniest things with this is a lot of astrologers have, different viewpoints on these. And, some already have done their kind of viewpoint and given their ideas on these. And they kind of are very different at times. And I think my unique viewpoint is a bit different as well with these planets and the sins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tend to approach it from a classical point of view as well. I mean, one of the ways we definitely can approach them is, who is your weakest planet in the chart? Because that planet could describe what type of deadly sins you are prone to. So the weakest planet in the natal chart, well, the viewers might have got the question how to spot that. But usually those are the ones who are in detriment or fall, or they have no essential dignity whatsoever. Those planets are called peregrine in the chart. So if you've got one of those and you've got squares or oppositions to those planets, well, they can be related to one of the deadly sins. So for instance, I give you an example. I can give you my own example. Mars is a little bit of a weak planet in my chart. I would say maybe almost one of the weakest one out of the personal planets. And Mars is going to be representing lust in your chart. And I've got that in the first house. And yeah, just to summarize that up, I have got that deadly sin. I'm sure I do. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so shall we just describe the seven deadly sins and then see how it goes? So why don't we start, for instance, with greed? Which one would you associate greed with?
With me, greed part was a bit. I was in between two planets when I was doing my own personal assessment of these, but in the end, I decided to go with Jupiter with the greedy part, because it's really easy. For maybe the viewers, it's easier to understand if we say that for every sin, there's a heavenly virtue associated with the sin as well, or the opposite side of it. And with Jupiter, it's charity. So it's very easy, to see the charitable side of Jupiter, and to maybe even a lot of people discuss it, and it's well known. But the greedy side for me with Jupiter comes into play when the charity gets overboard or gets too big, or people tend to overuse it. So let's say, for example, a person is very charitable towards you and starts giving you things maybe, and they're just doing it, let's say, from a higher perspective, from a spiritual perspective, and they're just doing it. But then the other person has a kind of like a decision there as well, because it's very easy to start taking that energy from that person. And if you don't, or if you're not aware of that side of yourself, or the taking side, then you can start taking too much, and then the greediness comes in, and just taking and taking and taking, but the other person is just charitable. So I think that would be one of my associations with it.
I agree with you. I mean, Jupiter is definitely the planet of excess and overindulgence.
Yes.
So wherever Jupiter is in your chart, it's going to be showing where you tend to go overboard. You know, I give you my own personal example, and that's definitely a greedy Jupiter. I've got Jupiter in the 10th house, in the sign of Sagittarius, and I'm a workaholic. So even this week I'm on holiday and I'm doing a video with you because I feel like, you know, I feel what happens with Jupiter, especially if you've got Piscean traits, that you tend to become, you tend to feel useless if you don't work. And you always have to do something because you are scared that people are gonna formulate an opinion about you, such as you are lazy and so forth. So that side of Jupiter is you know, a pleasing one, because Pisces wants to save everyone and wants to, it's a little bit of a people pleaser, Jupiter in this manner. Of course, you know, Jupiter squares especially is going to show what type of greediness you've got in your chart. So for instance, if you've got Jupiter square in your moon, actually pay attention to your stomach, because you might be able to, you know, eat loads. Or if you've got Jupiter square in Venus, you might love sweet things. Oh, in my chart, actually, that's the case. I love cakes a lot, and I've got a Jupiter and the Venus square in my chart. Some other astrologers associate greed with Saturn, and I do understand why. However, I think that's not going to be the case, or I don't share their opinion, because Saturn is always a planet which wants to teach you about moderation. And of course, wherever Saturn is in your chart, you might be dissatisfied with the area of life, because of course, Saturn is the planet of delay, and then it suggests something is going to come later in your life. And then you start maybe, you know, you start becoming a little bit dissatisfied within the area of life. Let's say if you've got Saturn in the 2nd house, you might be complaining all the time about money. However, Saturn wants you to work hard, and eventually it's going to give you that. So I would go with Jupiter as well. How do you feel about gluttony?
Well, gluttony for me was, well, pretty simple, or pretty easy. Let's say I would put it to Venus, because of the Taurus side of that energy there. And you know, Taurus is well known for enjoyment and pleasure and wanting that. Well, I have a lot of Tauruses around me. You know, I have a lot of Earth people around me, so I'm seeing a lot of Tauruses being very always pulled towards those enjoyments, and let's relax and let's be a little lazier. And I'm there, I have a lot of fire, then I'm like, oh, let's go, let's do something. And they're very much, let's say, more inclined to, you know, enjoy and drink and, you know, eat even. And I think with especially with difficult aspects to Venus there, it can go, you know, it can go overboard, you know, even Jupiter going there with a square, maybe Moon square. And I think even one of the difficult ones is Neptune in a difficult aspect, because that brings in, you know, the kind of substances and maybe alcohol gluttony, and you know, still wanting to take in that a lot and lot and lot.
I've got a slightly bit different opinion here.
Nice, I would love. Yeah.
Because I associate gluttony with the moon. Because moon rules food, and yeah, moon rules food for me. So yes, I do agree with you. A moon, for instance, or the aspects you mentioned, so like moon and Neptune. energy can really indicate overeating and drinking, or with Jupiter as well. So, or when you've got that connecting to Mars, maybe that could indicate someone who over exercises, or they don't never know when to stop.
Yeah.
For instance, I do get where you come from in regards to Venus. Definitely, I associate Venus a little bit with lust. Yeah, but when we get there, I'm gonna share my opinion about that. Okay, how do you feel about a pride?
Well, pride, I think for me, pride was maybe the easiest one, because for me, it's always associated with Sun and Leo energy, and I'm a Leo Sun, so I have a kind of like a personal, let's say, lesson already learned from my younger days, because I think this is where the especially where the Leo kind of pride and the ego comes in when you're younger, and you don't really know how to balance those, so you get too proud, and you get into your own head and you start thinking that you're better than everybody else, and then like the sin part comes in, and you kind of get, I feel like even bad saying this, but like a little obnoxious, towards other people. And you kind of have to realize through a hard lesson, through that sin, to um, basically just get off your high horse, and start understanding that other people are there and they're necessary, and they're you know good people, not that, and not that you're the best one all the time, although very hard for a Leo to understand, especially Leo Sun.
Oh yeah, sure. Did you used to brag a lot?
Oh, very much, very much.
Do you collect anything at all?
I used to. I
What do
used to
you
do
used to
that. Yeah,
collect?
I used to collect. I used to collect basketball cards.
Okay. Yeah, typical, typical. Because my best friend is a double Leo, and she collects picture frames. She's got hundreds of them in her room, hung up on the wall, and she collects bags.
Okay,
Yeah,
bags.
so I find it interesting. Yes, I share your opinion. I think pride definitely belongs to Sun, because Sun is the symbol of a lion, and lion is is quite a lazy energy, and they love attention, and definitely they are a very proud um, they are very proud people, surely. And yet they like collecting things, and Sun is the natural ruler of the fifth house, and the fifth house is all about, what does a kid need? They need constant attention. That's what Sun talks about. And yeah, they like bragging around, definitely.
It's interesting to hear about the picture frames, because that's a very curious one for me to have to probably ponder why she decided to even collect. Does she have anything in the second house, maybe?
Yeah, she's got Venus in the second house.
Okay, picture. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so, however, I do believe that it must be something to do with the moon as well. Now,
Okay.
her moon is in Cancer in the 12th house on 0 degree, and because moon rules memories, right? And then somehow, yeah, the Venus and the moon are in sextile. A little bit wide sextile, but they are in sextile. Well, that's what she collects. Great. How do you feel about lust?
I think this was like very difficult for me, because I wanted to put gluttony and lust both for Venus, actually, but this is what I remembered from one of your teaching classes, actually, and it helped me get a lot, like a very good and a bigger picture for my own consciousness and for my own growth, which you talked about Gemini being a very kind of like a curious and like a and sexually curious as well. And, personally, I have Venus in Gemini. So, you can probably imagine that these two energies together are a bit, sexually curious, and it can go to extremes at times. The curiosity that Gemini has can go to such, let's say, extremes that there's a kind of like a desire to get more and more and more and discover more of those sexual places, let's say, with others, and maybe in extreme cases with other partners as well, from those partners that are not your, let's say, most prominent partner, maybe.
Mercury is associated with toddlers and young energies.
Yeah.
So in that sense, Mercury is going to be discovering their sexuality around the age of 4 or 5, right? That's when the baby discovers that they've got something unique about them. And then, so I understand where you're coming from, but Mercury in that sense is just a player. I do believe that lust is going to belong to Mars or Venus, actually, because Mars rules Aries and it rules Scorpio as well. Now, we know that Scorpio is a very sexual energy, and we know that Mars, sees something and then they want that immediately. And that's what lust also means. It's not just about the sexual energies. So Mars tends to simply see an attractive potential mate, walking in the street, and it's enough for them to go up there and then, maybe start talking to them and so forth. So Mars in your natal chart, in my opinion, could show what you really lost after, So for instance, if you've got, in the first house, you might want attention on you time. If you've got that in the in the fourth house, you might want attention from your family, or you want your family to be paid attention to. So I would associate that with Mars. I think Venus could be there as well, but yeah, because especially with ladies, Mars might belong, because Mars is your sexual drive. So obviously that could be the case with both genders, of course. But maybe Mars is going to be more associated with males, and Venus is going to be more associated with females.
I do agree with Mars there, because I think especially with the Scorpio side, it's a very Scorpio's energy is so intense and so deep, and it the tension or the attraction can turn into lust pretty quickly because of their constant kind of like, I want this person, or I want this thing so deeply and intensely.
That's right. That's right. What about envy?
Well, envy, it's again, I was kind of in between of Mercury and Moon, but I decided to go with Moon. Because one of my, let's say, recent observations I've made, especially during full moons and new moons. These are times when a lot of the kind of energy is, it's very emotional. The emotions are very on the surface, and people are kind of, the emotions are overflowing mostly. This is what I've observed. And what happens then is, those negative emotions starts coming to the surface as well. And very often these are kind of negative emotions that start coming to the surface. And it's very easy not to deal with those emotions and get into the place of, I'll start comparing myself to others, because it's like an easier thing to do to put your attention on to others. And then what happens is the person starts to compare themselves. Oh my God. Compare themselves with the other person. I'm not pretty enough. I don't have that much money or the career that they have. And that's where the envy with the moon comes in with me, because it's our emotions, it's our emotional center.
Interesting approach. Interesting approach. I would associate envy with either Pluto or Mercury. You know, because again, I'm taking back that Mercury energy to when you are very little. And a baby always wants exactly the same what others have around themselves. That would be one of my explanation. Also, Pluto, I would associate with enviness, because Pluto is all about the power. Power means that you've got everything what others have. And it's not necessarily because you need what they have, but because in a way you don't want them to have what you have. And that's what power talks about. Of course, if you don't have, if you have something which others don't have, or just not many people have got that, then in that case, it's, it's a power. If everyone has got, for instance, a Samsung, I don't know, 20 Ultra, whatever phone, then it's not a power anymore. So you can't be flashy. Yeah, so I would go with Pluto, I think, when it comes to enviness. But the interesting part of this is that what I wanted people to understand today, that every single planet has got a little bit of a shade of the seven deadly sins. Everyone has got that tendency. And looking at the aspects are going to be very, very important. Maybe actually what Ian says, that, moon has got the tendency. Yes, because moon can be a two-faced energy.
So sloth for me is associated with Mars, and I know you mentioned Mars with lust, and I think I do agree with that side of the observation for sure. But one of the reasons why I decided to associate it with Mars is because of life energy and life force. Mars is our energy, and if we don't know how to use it, or we misuse it, or we use too much of it, and we give it away, for example, then it turns into sloth. And we just don't have the energy or the ambition or the drive to start creating in the world and start taking action in the world. Now, the other side of the coin here is diligence, or the heavenly virtue side is diligence here. And what is needed for diligence is energy and effort during a longer period of time. And once you learn to use that energy, or let's say you master the sin of sloth, then you're able to, diligently create more good things in the world and take action towards your wants and desires in the world. And I think this is one of the biggest things with Mars anyway, is to learn to use your energy and learn to place it in such ways that you are more durable for a longer period of time, not just for a very small spurts, let's say.
Yeah, sloth is an excessive laziness or the failure to act and utilize your talents. And basically, you're talking about a depressive Mars who has tried and tried and tried and full of failure, and then eventually they give up, right? That's what basically you are trying to say.
Yes.
I see. Well, I've definitely seen Mars playing part, especially with Neptune when it comes to sloth. But I would be associating sloth with Neptune, because Neptune, can show where you are in my opinion, Neptune can show where you are slothful, because this is the planet of, when you want to withdraw yourself from the society. Sometimes Neptune forget to care about things. Neptune, once they get hurt, then they just want to hide away, and they want to cuddle a pillow or just read books or listening to music. So it's very hard to motivate Neptune to do anything when it comes. Yeah, it's very hard to motivate Neptune at all, like to achieve something. They need a little bit of a, in my opinion. So, for instance, the Neptune and the Mars dialogue in the chart could really talk about inability to act on things. Because we've got Neptune, which is a coldish energy. We've got Mars, which is a hot energy. So Neptune is cooling Mars down big time. And yes, in that case, Mars might become, a little bit lazy. But I believe that's going to be something to do with a Neptunian influence. And what about, we've gone through all 7, right? Didn't we?
Have we?
Yeah.
I think Wrath.
Oh, yes, Wrath. Oh, yeah, Wrath. How do you feel about Wrath?
I think this is an interesting one. Again, I can, like you mentioned, people or people who are interested in astrology should understand that every planet kind of carries a little bit of that energy that we're talking about, the wrath or greed or whatever. And Mars, I can see Mars being put here very easily in the wrath part, but I put Saturn here because the wrath of Saturn expression doesn't usually come out of thin air. And with Saturn, it's for me, it's a lot to do with suppression. And actually wrath for me is again to do with suppression, because something happens, you don't really experience it fully, you don't feel it, you don't express it, you suppress it, and then once it boils over, then the wrath of Saturn, or the, let's say, wrath, overflows so much that it is kind of painful at times, even, or hurts someone.
I agree. I would put Saturn as well to wrath. And yeah, it might be quite hard to see Saturn associated with this sin, immediately. But then if we really start thinking about it, it's not easy to accept someone who has got authority over you, especially if you can't respect the person. And when it comes to authority and respect, that all belongs to Saturn. Most probably you're really gonna have to annoy Saturn to bring that quality out. Because of course, Saturn wants to become a guru, Saturn wants to teach us moderation and patience, but definitely, I can give you an example. I had a client today with a very badly placed Saturn. So imagine a Saturn, for instance, being in the sign of Cancer, being squared by Venus, as well as Pluto. So it's part of a T-square, actually. And Saturn was ruling the midheaven as well. And of course, she's experiencing, or he's experiencing, some type of delays in regards to her career. And basically, the way she described was that everyone has achieved something around me, but herself, because she had been working so hard to achieve something, and it's just not possible at all. And of course, she was curious whether she should carry on, pushing her dreams, or she should give up. And this is exactly what Saturn teachings are. Push yourself, put the work, the effort into something, and then you're going to get the rewards. I do believe Saturn needs to have a little bit of a combination, maybe with Mercury or Venus, even Uranus, because you mentioned something being compared. That's pretty much the case with Saturn and Mercury or Venus. You know, with Venus, Saturn, we might feel that I don't deserve love, or I don't deserve being rich, for instance, or I don't deserve to have money. And when it comes to Mercury, I am being compared to other students or other siblings and so forth. So eventually Saturn is going to bear themselves down, and then they're going to want to boss other people around, because that's going to be the way how Saturn is going to project, you know, some type of authority energy from himself. So yes, I would definitely go with Saturn as well. Great. So how would you spot them in the chart, Ian? In what case would you talk to a client about having one of these 7 deadly sins?
First of all, dignity, you know, placement, looking at the house sign, and then I would definitely look at aspects. If we see, you know, squares, oppositions, you know, at times maybe a trine can do that as well, because it's, you know, just gives so much. You know, maybe, you know, Jupiter, Venus, it can also be, you know, associated with some gluttony there as well. Yeah, I think these are like the ones I would go with.
Yeah, I agree with you. Aspects are definitely very important. I made an 8-week course on aspects. So if someone is interested, I've described all these energies a lot in detail with some minor aspects as well. But what I find, so I'm going to put the link below in case you are interested. But what I find interesting is that we've got number 7 appearing quite a lot, you know, in the Bible, in astrology as well. And number 7 is pretty much associated with an aspect called septile. And septile is showing in the chart what you are inspired by. So in a way, maybe I would even say that septile might show in the chart, apart from what you are inspired by, but what type of 7 deadly sins you might be having. By the way, obsession belongs to Sesqui square in the chart, which is 135 degrees. And interestingly enough, I was teaching about Sesqui square in the money webinar I made recently, and Sesqui square is associated with lottery winning as well. Plenty of, actually every single bigger amount of money people won was related to Sesqui square in their chart. But think about it, 70% of those winners also went bankrupted as well. So one of those, or most of those deadly sins, you know, must have appeared in some forms in their chart, because how can you lose so much money? No way, that's just too much, you know.
That's a nice connection. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Well, Ian, thank you very much. It was just, we wanted to touch base on these meanings of these 7 visible planets, or even the outer planets. It was nice talking to you, and then I hope we will collaborate sometime in the future.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. If you guys are interested in a reading with me or with Ian, then you will see the link below, or you will see Ian's email address in the description box. Thank you, everyone, and have a lovely weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.